My boyfriend spent his whole life inventing a time machine. He wants to travel back to win back his first love. I secretly followed him back in time. Then I saw him, who I had taught little by little how to love someone, gently saying to his first love while holding her hand, "Once I didn't know how to love. And I hurt your heart. Now I have learned." The day after I traveled back, I met Julian Liang at Sienna Xia's birthday party. He appeared in the private room holding a cake he made himself and carefully selected gifts. In the faint glow of the candlelight, there were his focused and affectionate eyes. The ambiguous atmosphere instantly reached its peak, and everyone gathered around to watch Sienna Xia make a wish and blow out the candles. Then they started to cheer for the two to kiss. I quietly stood at the edge of the crowd, watching as Sienna Xia, holding a rose, playfully tiptoed to give Julian Liang a kiss on the cheek. The roommate standing next to me introduced me. "That's Sienna Xia's boyfriend. Isn't he super handsome? Not only that, but he is also very considerate, gentle, attentive, and always keeps a distance with girls. He's simply perfect." I silently watched as Julian Liang gently tucked back the hair that was falling by Sienna Xia's ear. His eyes filled with a smile. After withdrawing my gaze, I replied softly to my friend, "Indeed mature and reliable, very good at taking care of others." After all, that was something I spent 5 years of time and effort teaching little by little. The original Julian Liang was not like this. He had a bad temper, no patience, was impulsive and irritable, explosive and arrogant. The relationship with Sienna Xia, which lasted less than 2 years, ultimately ended after she expressed all her dissatisfaction and fell in love with his friend. Julian Liang was not willing to accept it. So he spent several years developing a time machine, learning how to love someone from me, and then immediately left me to go back to the year when he first started dating Sienna Xia in his sophomore year, even though the next day would have been our 5th anniversary, but he couldn't wait any longer. Now, we have become strangers we never knew. The star of the birthday party is Sienna Xia, so everyone's conversation revolves around her and Julian Liang. Someone asked her how she found such a perfect boyfriend. Others asked if Julian Liang has any friends as handsome as him. Some even half-jokingly said, "Have you heard of the saying, those who plant trees benefit later? Julian Liang is so thoughtful and considerate." Could it be that all of this was taught by his ex-girlfriends? Upon hearing this, Julian Liang was not angry, still smiling faintly, and then took Sienna Xia's hand, as if confessing, yet also as if making a promise. "There are no exes. Sienna is my first love, and also the only person I love." Of course he didn't have an ex because I got together with Julian Liang 2 years after they broke up. I am not the predecessor, I am the successor. But that doesn't stop him from using the way he taught me to love him on Sienna Xia. The lights in the private room flickered, and the crowd moved around, so I was never seen by him from the beginning to the end, until the cake was cut. Sienna Xia was handing out the cake and introducing friends to him at the same time. Julian Liang stood in front of me, and our eyes met. I couldn't describe the expression on his face when he saw me for a moment. The smile on his lips froze, and there was a bit of unexpected confusion in his eyes. But he quickly regained his composure. Then, when Sienna Xia introduced me by saying, "This is Lu, my classmate," he stared at me in a daze. I maintained a perfectly timed gentle smile. Watching Sienna Xia tug at his shirt and frown while asking, "What's wrong? Do you know each other?" Only then did Julian Liang come back to his senses and hand me the cake he had cut into small pieces, coldly and distantly saying, "I don't know, I am holding a cake while sitting on a single armchair." Looking at Julian Liang, who has returned to the center of the crowd, under the flickering and flowing light and shadow, he is tall and long-legged, with strong features, indeed. He is handsomely extraordinary, especially his eyes, deep like ink. When he looks at someone with full attention, they always seem innocent and full of emotion. So being with him for 5 years, no matter how angry or sad I was, as soon as I saw his face, as long as he quietly looked at me, and softly said, I would immediately surrender, easily forgiving him. The small cake in my hand emits a faint scent of orange blossom, and my roommate bites the spoon, murmuring, You have to try it, it's really super incredibly delicious." He really put a lot of thought into this. Now I have to add another criterion to my standards for finding a boyfriend. I curved my lips and lowered my head to take a small bite, a very familiar smell. I taught Julian Liang how to do it. I spent half a month patiently accompanying him to try again and again, carefully guiding him step by step to learn it. He looked at me seriously and said, "Lu, wait for me to learn, and from now on, I will make a cake for you by hand every time your birthday comes." Later he learned, but he never made a cake for me even once. In fact, in the trajectory of fate from my previous life, my first encounter with Julian Liang was not at this birthday party, because I actually don't know Sienna Xia very well. She invited the whole class to her birthday party, and I wasn't planning to attend, but my roommate dragged me along for the fun. So I left after staying for a while and giving her the gift and wishes. Therefore, I missed Julian Liang, who arrived late. I only heard about him that evening when I returned to the dormitory. "Lu, you left early. You didn't see Sienna Xia's boyfriend. He's a real top guy. It's a pity that they seem so cold and indifferent." The whole party had an impatient vibe. Setting aside their personalities, they actually look quite compatible in terms of appearance. I'm not very curious and generally not interested in other people's affairs, let alone another girl's boyfriend. So after hearing that, I simply smiled indifferently and didn't pay any more attention, nor did I ask for his name. It was only later, shortly after being with Julian Liang, that I accidentally saw a photo in his study and realized that he was the handsome guy I hadn't had the chance to see back then, Sienna Xia's boyfriend. However, I don't really care, after all. Who doesn't have a past? However, now, we have returned to the past. Unlike the previous life, this time, almost everyone is praising Julian Liang. Perhaps the atmosphere around them is too lively, making my corner look somewhat lonely, with a feeling that is hard to describe. I unconsciously drank a few more glasses of fruit wine. In a tipsy daze, I momentarily couldn't tell whether the crossing was real or not, so I got up and went to the terrace outside to enjoy the wind for a long time. After I was refreshed, I came back and the crowd had already dispersed. With my fingers resting on the half-closed box door, I saw Julian Liang kneeling in front of the drunken Sienna Xia on the sofa, gently holding her fingers and saying, "In the past, I didn't know how to love and hurt your heart, now I've learned." I have to admit that Julian Liang, who has an extremely high talent for learning, can master anything he wants to learn. So, after that birthday party, I started hearing frequently about all the things Julian Liang did for Sienna Xia. For example, he would bring a rose every time he came to see her, or peel shrimp and remove fish bones for her at dinner parties, and even create small romances with handmade gifts. Oh, he would occasionally come to accompany Sienna Xia in her classes. Since returning from the time travel, our interactions have only been that one time at Sienna Xia's birthday party, then it's today. My roommate and Sienna Xia are in the same guitar club, and they are going on a mountain climbing team building activity. She begged me to go with her to take photos. Please, I really like your composition, lighting, and color style. I'll treat you to a big meal when we get back. I gave in to her persistent persuasion and agreed. Then, while carrying the camera, I rushed to the meeting point and saw Julian Liang, who came to accompany Sienna Xia. He was wearing a black and white sports outfit, standing in the crowd with his head slightly lowered, seriously listening to Sienna Xia speak. It was probably the gaze lingering on him that made him notice. Before he turned his head to look over, I calmly shifted my gaze away. My roommate exaggeratedly introduced my photography skills to her companions. Lu, a self-taught photography master, excels in lighting and top-notch composition. I was amused by her and politely said to those laughing classmates, "Amateur player, if anyone needs help taking photos, I can assist." From then on, people kept exchanging small snacks with me to have me take their photos, until Sienna Xia pulled Julian Liang over, smiling brightly and said, "Lu, can you help us take a picture too?" I smiled and nodded while holding the camera, looking for a suitable spot to point the lens at them. Just before I had a chance to press the shutter, I heard my roommate standing nearby loudly ask, "Julian Liang, why aren't you smiling? Look at Lu here, smile." I silently waited for Julian Liang to show a stiff smile, quickly capturing a few shots. On the way back later, we sat together on the bus looking at the photos. After receiving everyone's polite and pleasant compliments, we finally flipped to the few pictures my roommate took of me. Actually, the photos were taken pretty well. Except one of the shots focused on the face of a passerby who unintentionally walked past me from behind. It was a boy wearing a black hoodie and grey pants, With the hood pulled low over his messy bangs, amid the joyful noise, someone suddenly pointed at the photo and said, "There's a saying online, you may not know each other, but you are frozen in the same frame. Would you really know each other in another time and space?" The smile on my face finally faded completely after I heard what he said. What he said is correct. I did know this boy in my previous life. His name is Chen Jingji, my first love. I haven't seen him for a very long time, since he died on our second anniversary. It's like my life has been frozen on the day he died, stuck in a pause, hanging in mid-air. Now time has reversed. We have not met yet. My wandering thoughts were pulled back by a sudden emergency brake. And the camera slipped from my hand due to inertia, which Julian Liang caught quickly from the side. After a period of extreme tension, I calmed down a bit and was about to ask him to return it, but I found he was frowning and staring at the photo. In the next moment, my roommate tilted his head and a surprised voice unexpectedly came out. "Julian Liang, he looks a lot like you." I do not know what Julian Liang thought in that fleeting moment when his fingers suddenly tightened. But he is indeed a substitute. The matter of me being with Julian Liang was actually proposed by him. However, I know better than anyone that Julian Liang is not Chen Jingji, and he is certainly not like him. So at first, being with him, I felt a twinge of guilt and remorse because my only purpose was to see his face. It wasn't until I accidentally learned that his first love was Sienna Shea, and the statement he made when drunk, "When I learn how to love someone, I will come find you," that I belatedly understood what he meant when he said to me, "I won't love anyone. Can you teach me how to love you?" He doesn't love me. We both get what we need, so I began to comfortably treat him as a substitute. I started to teach him the way Chen Jingji loved me. I finally understand why in most xianxia dramas, after the protagonist's lover passes away, a phantom can trap them. I know he is not the real lover, but I still choose to indulge. I am also clearly aware that this is undoubtedly drinking poison to quench thirst, but fate made me see the scattered documents in his study when I was most ready to give up, about wormholes, black holes, speed of light, about the clock paradox, time reversal, and time travelers, and a sentence that seemed to be written casually: "Travelers can only cross over into their own past bodies." In the moment my heart suddenly raced, an incredible guess inexplicably surfaced in my mind. In fact, after being with Julian Liang, the impression he left on me was not that he couldn't love, but rather that he was intelligent, an extreme kind of intelligence. The walls full of certificates, trophies, and the title of a physics genius all highlight the brilliance and smoothness of his journey, while also giving him a certain uncontainable pride, not knowing how to lower oneself to love someone in a relationship, until breaking up with Sienna Shea. That was probably the only problem he faced that he couldn't solve, so he obsessively tried every method to find the answer, then go back to tackle it. To be honest, I don't really know whether Julian Liang's obsession is with the unattainable Sienna Shea or his only failure in life. I also don't know if he truly wants to reverse time and go back, and I have no idea if he can succeed, but what if? So I pretended to know nothing and continued to be with him, year after year, surpassing the time he spent with Sienna Shea and also the time I spent with Chen Jingji, until the day before the 5th anniversary. I called him, "Julian Liang, let's talk when you get back. I want to break up." Unexpectedly, he was silent on the other end of the phone for a long time, and then gently said, "Lu, I might not be able to spend our 5th anniversary with you. Sorry about that." I furrowed my brow and was about to say it wasn't important when the phone was hung up. Holding the phone in place for a few seconds, I suddenly realized what he meant. Without hesitation, I rushed to his lab, which was already empty. Then, we became strangers from a couple. He submitted a perfect answer sheet and became the model boyfriend in everyone's eyes. I also have the chance to save Chen Jingji and change his doomed fate. Just as I don't care about Julian Liang and Sienna Shea's pasts, he also doesn't care about who I've been with. So I think, regarding the fact that Chen Jingji is my first love, Julian Liang won't know. The camera was finally returned to my hands. Julian Liang said nothing and silently looked out the window. I had no time to consider anything else. My gaze was fixed on the photo, and my mind was filled with Chen Jingji, when suddenly I realized something. No matter how much I want to maintain the development of my past life and wait for our first encounter on the basketball court, the current trajectory has still deviated due to one small change after another. for example. This photo in which he appears, for example, in the public class the next day, he sat next to me. I have heard people say that music and smells are carriers of memory. Indeed, because at the moment Chen Jingji sat down, the familiar light orange fragrance almost struck my heart faster than all my reactions, pulling at the threads of elongated, fine pain. I sat stiffly at the table, letting the memories of the past surge forth like a tide, intertwining romantic scenes and vivid fragments of our time together, until the last second before the car accident when he turned the steering wheel towards me, then died in front of me. When I loved him the most, the teacher's question interrupted my thoughts. She called my name, and in the silent classroom, I stood up a beat too late, unable to say a word, because I wasn't listening at all. I remember this teacher, known in the college for asking students who couldn't answer questions to help others respond. So, after I remained silent for half a minute, she glanced at the drooping heads and asked slowly, "Is there anyone willing to answer?" At that time, I hadn't fully recovered from the sorrowful memories, and I actually thought it would be fine if no one stood up, because I could keep looking at Chen Jingyi next to me while standing, without him noticing, his long fingers pressed against a black pen. He flipped through the book absent-mindedly, then suddenly stood up and said loudly, "I agree." In shock, my head, which had been drooping, gradually turned to look at him with a slight tilt, but what surprised me even more was that the teacher adjusted his glasses and looked up and asked, "Is the guy behind you also helping to answer the questions?" I and Chen Jingji almost simultaneously turned around to look, and saw Julian Liang, who came to class with Sienna Xia, 2 rows behind us. Also standing up. In an instant, countless eyes fell on him. He didn't look at me, but calmly looked ahead and said, "No, I'm going to the restroom." He went to the restroom, so Chen Jingji helped me out. After sitting down, I was just about to turn to thank him when he suddenly turned his head and whispered to me softly, "Classmate, your eyes are so red. Are you about to cry? It's just that you couldn't answer the question. Don't cry." Facing his sudden approach, I was momentarily stunned before slowly realizing, but I didn't tell him that the sore and red eyes were not because I couldn't answer the question. Later, using the excuse of treating him, I said I wanted to invite him to dinner. After class, I took him to a nearby beef noodle restaurant and skillfully told the boss's wife, 2 bowls of beef noodles, without scallions. I turned around and saw Chen Jingji looking at me with a half smile. He asked me, "How did you know I also don't like scallions?" I paused for a moment, unsure of how to explain, when I heard him say, "Although I don't know who you were thinking of when you were placing your order, I habitually mentioned my taste preferences, but I still think it's necessary to introduce myself." Saying this, he reached out his right hand, looking at me seriously and started to speak. "Hello, Lu, I am Chen Jingji, a first-year medical student at a university. I know he is from the neighboring school A, and I also know he is actually here to help a friend with a class substitute." This beef noodle restaurant, located between 2 universities, was the one we frequented the most when we were together in a past life. Although a long time has passed, I still clearly remember the last time I came here, which was in the 2nd week after Chen Jingji left. There is a term in psychology called emotional isolation defense mechanism, which prevents the brain from collapsing when a person faces extreme sadness and pain. So at first, facing Chen Jingji's death, facing the fact that I would never see him again or hear his voice, I was numb and calm to the point of feeling nothing. Looking at the grayish-white photo on the tombstone, I didn't shed a single tear, but I would have trouble falling asleep during the quiet nights, lie recalling every scene from the past, until one ordinary evening. I came to this noodle shop and habitually ordered 2 bowls of beef noodles without scallions. Then, after the noodles were brought to me, looking at the empty seat across from me, tears fell unexpectedly. The emotions that had been sealed for so long felt like they were suddenly torn open, followed by pain spreading from my heart throughout my body, and uncontrollable tears. In the end, after forcing myself to eat the entire bowl of noodles, I vomited it all out in extreme sadness. Since then, I have never returned to this noodle shop. Fortunately, returning to the place where it all began, the car accident has not yet happened, and Chen Jingji is still alive. Everything can still be salvaged. I looked at the hand in front of me and gently held it, explaining carefully, "I wasn't thinking about anyone. It's just because of my preference. I accidentally said 2 bowls." He tilted his head and laughed. That's really convenient. Then it'll always be 2 bowls from now on, in the end. It was Chen Jingji who paid. In my surprised gaze, he smiled and handed over his phone. In front of so many people, if a girl pays the bill, it wouldn't seem very gentlemanly of me. How about this? Let's add each other on WeChat, and you can transfer it back to me. I added him on WeChat and transferred the money to him. But it was returned. He said, "First time eating, it's unreasonable for the girl to pay, so let me do you a favor, they have a free medical consultation event." And they asked me to help take photos. A week later, I took the camera and followed him to the nearby community, recording the medical consultation scenes. In the photos, Chen Jingji was patiently answering residents' questions, measuring blood pressure and blood sugar for the elderly, and talking to children. The midday sunlight landed on him, dressed in a white coat, as if it had coated him with a faint layer of light. Dazzling yet gentle. If Julian Liang is a high, difficult-to-pick flower, then Chen Jingji is a grand and warm autumn sun. They have never been the same. As the free clinic was nearing its end, everyone was talking to the elderly and children. I saw Chen Jingji surrounded by a group of little kids and went over to find him helping them make bamboo stick figures. Amid the chattering voices calling Brother Jingji, he was bowing his head, gripping the green slender bamboo, his bony fingers skillfully threading and tying knots, then sending them one by one. This one is for little Yuan Yuan, this one is for little Tong Tong, this one is for little Dodo. I casually took a few photos, and while flipping through them, I suddenly heard Chen Jingji's voice. When I looked up, I saw him handing me a beautiful bamboo stick figure, jokingly saying, "Here, everyone gets a share, this is for little L." Later, through several encounters, Chen Jingji and I became friends who could go out for meals together. He would help me gather votes when I participated in the most beautiful sunset photography competition, and he would seriously sculpt various human organs when we played with clay together. Then, when the couple across from us finally shaped a standard heart, he raised the heart in his hand and said, "Look, this is a perfect heart." I put down my disheveled limbs and awkwardly smiled at the speechless couple opposite me. Pulling Chen Jingji to change tables, he will also take me to meet his fellow apprentices. Pointing to those senior brothers and sisters who have taken off their white coats, he introduced them to me one by one, greeting those familiar faces politely. I remember the gentle and elegant senior sister who becomes a cool and handsome biker after taking off her white coat. I also remember the steady and calm senior brother who is actually a big name in the esports circle. As for my appearance and Chen Jing's introduction of my friend Lu, they all looked at me with kind, teasing smiles. To be honest, they really didn't say anything, but it seemed like they said everything. I felt my cheeks warm as I was looked at, and Chen Jingji pleaded in front of me, "Senior brothers and sisters, please let her go. Don't scare her." They continued to smile at me with their chins resting in their hands. It's easy to say, if you call us senior brothers and sisters. We'll be one family from now on. Later on, I also became friends with them, playing murder mystery games together and participating in music festivals held by universities. I immersed myself in this stable and joyful life, momentarily forgetting that I had traveled back in time, until I encountered Julian Liang again. Perhaps it was because during that time all my attention and thoughts were focused on Chen Jingji, that I would automatically block out my roommate's gossip in the dormitory. So when I saw Julian Liang, I suddenly realized that I hadn't heard his name in a long time. In front of the outdoor barbecue stall on a summer night with a gentle breeze, I was sitting with Chen Jingji and his senior brothers and sisters playing Truth or Dare when I suddenly felt a strong gaze on me. I instinctively turned to look and happened to meet Julian Liang's gaze. He was sitting at another table with Sienna Xia and another couple. It seemed intentional. Sienna Xia held Julian Liang's hand, not caring whether he was listening, just talking to herself, and then, not knowing what she was saying, she laughed happily, while the boy opposite her had a tight expression, pursing his lips in silence. The atmosphere was harmonious, but there was an inexplicable subtlety. The gaze that Julian Liang cast on me made me feel uncomfortable, but fortunately, the boy opposite Sienna Xia suddenly stood up and said he didn't want to eat, looking very displeased. "They are leaving." I held the goose leg that Chen Jingji handed me, and I heard Sienna Xia leaning next to Julian Liang, slightly drunk, talking as she walked. "Julian Liang, I like you the most." As they passed by us, my gaze lightly brushed over them. And I found that Sienna Shear indeed showed signs of liking him both in her behavior and words. However, he seemed not to be happy. This doubt soon had an answer. Sienna Shear broke up with him. The roommate who joined the guitar club sighed with great regret every night during the gossip time. Do you know, Sienna Shear broke up with Julian Liang. The pen in my hand suddenly stopped, and I remembered a night in my past life when my roommate also mentioned that Sienna Shear had broken up with her boyfriend. At that time, she said Sienna Shear accused Julian Liang of not knowing how to love, and she could no longer tolerate being with him, firmly deciding to break up. Soon after which she officially announced her relationship with Julian Liang's friend. But now Julian Liang has clearly become the best boyfriend in everyone's eyes, so I don't understand why they still broke up. My roommate's answer was that Sienna Shear had grown tired of him. Julian Liang loved her like a robot with a preset program, which was very boring. Then the roommate opened WeChat Moments to show, look, she has officially announced her new relationship. And the person is a friend of Julian Liang. I looked at that WeChat moment and couldn't say a word. It was the guy who looked unhappy at the barbecue stall that night. Then the roommate suddenly lowered her voice and said in a mysterious tone, the real reason is that Sienna Shear has never liked Julian Liang. She was only with him to make her longtime crush, her childhood friend, jealous. Yes, that childhood friend is Julian Liang's friend, who is now her boyfriend. So whether or not Julian Liang will fall in love, Sienna Shear doesn't care at all because they will eventually break up. And Julian Liang, thinking he has the correct answer, ultimately discovers that the question itself was wrong. Amid a sigh of regret, another roommate asked, so Julian Liang just agreed like that? He didn't try to win her back. He clearly seemed to like Sienna Shear so much. No, I heard he calmly accepted it, without saying anything to try to keep her. I find this somewhat absurd. Instinctively, I refuse to accept this fact, because it makes me feel that what is meant to happen will eventually happen. This feeling reached its peak when I saw Julian Liang again a week later. I found a lost child in a large shopping mall in the city center and took her to the broadcasting station, where I stayed with her until her mother arrived. She was a very beautiful and dignified woman, dressed in an expensive dark blue chipao, who came over, took the child's hand, and said she wanted to thank me by inviting me to drink tea at the tea house downstairs. After repeatedly refusing, I was nevertheless taken there by her, as she said she would feel guilty otherwise. After passing through the wooden carved screen, I saw Julian Liang sitting at a square table wearing a light grey sweater, holding a Celadon cup. Distant memories are suddenly awakened. Although the timing was off, our first meeting in a past life was because I found this child. However, the person who came to the radio station to pick up the child was Julian Liang, who was his aunt's daughter when she occasionally returned to the country. Julian Liang's parents were both researchers who were often away from him, so he had always been alone and had little family affection. During the 5 years I spent with him, I rarely met his family. Therefore, this cousin and little niece, who I only met briefly, have also been forgotten by me over the passage of time. But I did not expect it to happen again, with the same situation arising in a slightly different way. The girl's mother said this was her cousin whom she had arranged to meet, and then explained to Julian Liang, it was this girl who helped find him. Her name is Lu. With that, Julian Liang put down the teacup and looked over, speaking slowly and deliberately, yeah. I know him. I don't know how to describe my state of mind at that moment. The girl's mother was very surprised when she learned that I and Julian Liang were alumni and said, what a coincidence. Curiously, he looked between me and Julian Liang and asked, one is from the physics department and the other from the Chinese department. How did you meet? The private room fell silent, and I gently shifted my gaze from the swaying iris opposite to me and said softly, not really acquainted. He is my classmate's boyfriend. I have met him once. The next second, Julian Liang added, they have already broken up. Oh, so now he is the ex-boyfriend. Probably sensing my lack of enthusiasm, the girl's mother didn't continue asking about me, but instead talked with Julian Liang. I took the tea snack and focused on entertaining the little girl next to me, not paying attention to their conversation until I heard the girl's mother say meaningfully to Julian Liang, you seem to have changed a lot this time. Your personality is completely subdued. What happened? Was it because of that ex-girlfriend? He shook his head lightly. No, she doesn't like me, and I don't like her either. Oh, but you still look quite sad. Julian Liang fell silent for a few seconds, his voice somewhat hoarse, because I realized too late that I seemed to have missed someone I really liked. I don't know what he meant, and I don't want to know, but since then, our meetings have become more frequent, trapped under the same roof by heavy rain, eating in the cafeteria, sitting at the same table. Even the campus orange cat that I often fed suddenly came to my feet one day. Too many coincidences are no longer coincidences, so I reduced the frequency of going out, no longer ate in the cafeteria, and did not go to feed that orange cat anymore. After a while, Julian Liang stood in the corridor I must pass through in the library, seemingly perplexed, asking me, "Lu, are you avoiding me?" Yes, I really am avoiding him. After all, this time around, there's no longer any relationship between us, and I don't want any either, so I calmly said, "Then, what position are you in to question me here? Are you my classmate's ex-boyfriend?" He looked at me for a long time. His face turned paler, and finally turned his body to let me go. I thought, someone as proud as him probably wouldn't come looking for me again. But his breakup, our meeting, and various events that happened earlier or later, similar to those in the past life, still caused a strong sense of unease in my heart. I started to frequently dream about a car accident that happened in my past life. In my dream, I returned to the day of my second anniversary with Chen Jingji, where he drove me to dinner. I was hugging a bouquet sitting in the passenger seat, sharing with him the travel variety show I had recently watched, and talking about the places I planned to travel to in the future. He quietly listened to my rambling, occasionally looking at me with gentle eyes and responding, "Okay, I'll listen to you." I don't know why, but I feel something is off about him. However, I couldn't pinpoint what was wrong at that moment. So I gave up and continued to ramble on to him. When it came to discussing how to celebrate each anniversary in the future, a truck suddenly ran a red light and crossed the street. In fact, there weren't many vehicles or people on that road at the time. As long as the brakes were applied in time, the accident wouldn't have happened. But the brakes failed. Chen Jingji immediately turned the steering wheel towards me, leaving me with the only chance of survival. After the severe collision, I lost consciousness for a few seconds. When I opened my eyes again, I was in a blood-stained cabin, my whole body aching so much I couldn't speak a word. In my blurred vision, there was a long piece of debris stuck in Chen Jingji's chest, and he was desperately begging the people who had gathered around, save her first, please, save her first." Later, they pulled me out through the shattered car window. The last thing I saw before losing consciousness was the car exploding. The investigation results were soon released. Except for the truck that ran a red light due to driver fatigue, Chen Jing's car had its braking system deliberately damaged. The criminal was a man who had accumulated millions of yuan in debt from online loans. Unable to repay, he developed a desire to retaliate against society and damaged the braking systems of almost all vehicles in the area. So during that period, the rate of traffic accidents was extremely high, with a high number of casualties. I lay on the hospital bed, numbly looking at the news on my phone, quietly listening to the comfort from my senior and junior classmates who came to visit me. Only when they said that day Chen Jingji was actually going to propose did I realize why he was acting strange. The ring was found on Chen Jingji's body. It's very beautiful. I really like it. During that time, everyone was telling me to look forward and move on, but I didn't understand. If I leave, what will happen to Chen Jingji who stays here? I was awakened by a sudden and urgent alarm, blinking in confusion at the ceiling. I noticed the wetness at the corner of my eye and realized that I had cried again. Every detail of that car accident is almost etched into my bones, including the criminal who sabotaged the brake system. But I can't do anything now. After all, he was just a common person with debts before he damaged the brakes. And I dare not approach him in advance, which might cause other incidents. I can only keep the changes within the minimum range, and wait until the day he commits the crime. And during the waiting period, I was together with Chen Jingji. Before that, I actually had a vague feeling that he was about to confess his feelings. The reason was once when a senior in the photography club asked me to pretend to be his girlfriend to get rid of a girl who kept bothering him, in a quiet and elegant restaurant. The senior put his arm around me and said to the girl across from us, "I really do have a girlfriend. Look, her name is Lu." My acting wasn't very good, and I was afraid I would give myself away if I spoke, so I tried hard to maintain a smile and nodded in agreement. The next second, I unintentionally saw Chen Jingji and his friend sitting at another table behind the frosted divider. He had probably watched the whole time, and when our eyes met, he suddenly lowered his head, not responding to his friend's questions, and quietly ate his rice. That night, I scrolled through his moments and saw a picture of a heart model that had been broken, with the caption, "My heart is shattered." The next day, I brought his favorite green plum cake to find him, in the corridor filled with the setting sun. He stood in front of me with a dejected expression, no longer the spirited person he used to be. I watched as he silently took a bite of the pastry and asked him, "Is it sweet?" "Not sweet, bitter." I nodded in understanding and softly said, "Oh," then changed the topic to mention a new roast duck restaurant nearby, asking if we should go try it. He silently stared at the ground for a moment, his voice a bit low. "Shall we go eat together? Does your boyfriend mind?" I asked in surprise. Are you referring to that senior from yesterday? I was helping to fend off the romantic advances. "How was it? Wasn't my acting great, even fooling you?" Pausing for a moment. Seeing his gradually brightening eyes, I continued, "But even if I had a boyfriend, it was just having a meal with friends, he shouldn't mind." "So, do you mind having a boyfriend?" he suddenly interrupted, looking at me nervously. As we made eye contact, I smiled faintly and replied casually, "That depends on whether the Osmanthus cake is sweet or not." I waited in line for 2 hours to buy it. He was taken aback for a second, stuffed the remaining half-piece of Osmanthus cake into his mouth, and said indistinctly, "Sweet, sweet me to death." That night, he posted another WeChat moment, which was a photo of my profile, with the text, "My remaining life. This is how I ended up with Chen Jingji." There are no romantic confession scenes like those in novels or idol dramas. Only two hearts filled with each other. After that, we spent a very ordinary but happy time together like all campus couples, until the day marked on the calendar came, outside an old community from many years ago. At 3 in the morning, the time of the crime, the damaged brake device. But that day was no longer the second anniversary of Chen Jingji and me, and his car was not parked there due to various changes. What I want to save are the remaining people. At first, I was very apprehensive, worried that various unexpected situations would arise, but the reality turned out to be unexpectedly smooth, not wanting to be involved in a crime and face various interrogations. I reported to the police that I lost a necklace worth 20,000 yuan in that area, and the last time I saw it was at 3:30 in the morning. The police quickly retrieved surveillance footage and saw a suspicious man repeatedly appearing near several vehicles, holding tools in his hand. It was only natural to start doubting and verifying, and it had nothing to do with me. As for the necklace, I told the police the next day that I found it in the trash can. I also heard that a lot of cars had their brakes damaged that night. The criminal has been caught. The concerns that had troubled me for a long time have probably come to an end here, but I still feel uneasy deep down. This unease continued until 2 weeks later when Chen Jingji and I went to the cinema to watch a movie. As I walked slowly through the crowd, a man with a scar on his right cheek brushed past me. A knife hidden in his sleeve caught my eye as he was heading towards a pregnant woman. In the blink of an eye, my actions were almost faster than my thoughts, and by the time I reacted, I had already blocked the knife for that pregnant woman. I lay on the ground, finally realizing what I had forgotten. The scarred man is a fugitive, who died in a car accident due to brake failure during his escape in his previous life. But in this life, the accident was prevented. He survived. Everything was in chaos. Chen Jingji was kneeling beside me as if saying something, his forehead veins bulging from the effort, but I couldn't hear anything anymore. I seemed to have walked in the fog for a very long time, finally reaching the park next to the community where I lived when I was 10. At that time, I was taking hormone medication for my illness all the time, and I had become very fat. So the other children often circled around me, laughing and mocking me. "Big fat pig, ugly monster. Big fat pig, ugly monster." I covered my ears and tried to explain to them, "I'm not a big fat pig, I'm sick, I'll get better. I'm not a big fat pig." No one listened to my explanation. They smiled and watched me sitting on the ground, shouting even more, until a boy descended like a god from the heavens, coldly warning them that anyone who dared to say another word would be hung on a tree for the birds to relieve themselves on him. After they screamed and ran away, the boy squatted in front of me, who dared not look up, and gently comforted me, "Don't be afraid. I've scared them all away." I slowly looked up at his handsome face and said softly, "Brother, I'm not a fat pig, I'm sick." He smiled at me gently. I know, you're just sick, you'll be okay." After that day, every time I came to the park, I could see him jogging. No one wanted to play with me, only he did. But he is so good looking that I feel very inferior and sad. I can't help but ask him, "Brother, what if I can never get better?" He rubbed my head and said, "Then I will become a doctor, and I will heal you." From the first meeting to the separation, it was only 11 days. This was the last thing he said to me, and right after that, I heard his mother calling him from not far away, "Jingji, Chen Jingji, come home for dinner." The next day, my father's infidelity was discovered, and my mother took me and moved out immediately. From then on, I never saw Chen Jingji again. The next time we met, he had become a medical student. Standing in the crowd, as always, handsome and dazzling, and my illness has already gotten better. Later, we unexpectedly ran into each other on the basketball court, got to know each other, and became a couple. The person I had a crush on for nearly 10 years also started to like me. Even later, before I could ask him if he remembered me, he died. Fortunately, this time I managed to save him. If this is the price, then I am willing to pay it. I once again returned to the thick fog that wouldn't clear. Vaguely sensing someone speaking beside me, yet unable to react, in the midst of it all, I seemed to hear Chen Jingji's voice, as if he were helplessly asking the person next to him, his voice broken and hoarse. "I clearly studied medicine for so long. Why can't I save her? Teacher, what should I do?" When I regained consciousness again, the ward had already become very quiet. Someone was sitting by the bed. I used all my strength, but could only slightly lift my eyelid, barely making out his face, like Chen Jingji's, or like Julian Liang's. I tried to distinguish for a long time, but failed, until he spoke. "If I hadn't crossed back, would it not have triggered the butterfly effect that caused you to get hurt? Or maybe you came back too, and saved that pregnant woman." After saying that, he paused for a moment, as if mocking himself with a laugh. "I never knew that in another timeline, you liked me because of him. It was still because of my crossing over that indirectly made you fall for him in this timeline." This question, I probably will never get an answer to. But, I regret it, all along. I thought all the difficult problems could be solved through studying, reasoning, and calculation. It turns out, loving someone is not. It is unsolvable. It's like I can no longer make you fall in love with me again. I actually don't really want to recall the 5 years I spent with Julian Liang, but a small thing inexplicably comes to mind. That was probably during the winter of our 3rd year together, when I was on the way home from work and accidentally bumped into someone while talking to him on the phone, and with a gasp, my phone precisely fell through the narrow gap of the rainwater grate into the sewer. As a result, I felt extremely depressed, and I used the cash I had on me to take a taxi for the whole night. The next day I found out that Julian Liang had been looking for me all night. I didn't know why he did that, but 2 people with impure intentions are bound to have no outcome. Now, no matter how much I say, it's all meaningless. I woke up on an ordinary afternoon. As soon as I opened my eyes, I saw Chen Jingji patiently wiping my fingers one by one. I tilted my head and called out to him softly, "Chen Jingji." The action of wiping suddenly paused. He didn't look up. The veins on the back of his hand that gripped the towel bulged, and after a moment of silence, he got up and walked out decisively. I stared at the white ceiling, counting silently in my heart. By the time I reached 57, he walked back in. The corners of my eyes turned red. After a thorough examination, there were no major issues. On the day I was discharged, Chen Jingji took me to where he lived and began to carefully take care of me, spending every day revolving around me. I said to him somewhat apologetically, "I'm sorry, we just got together not long ago, and I'm already bothering you like this." He seemed amused by the anger, pinched my cheek, placed the soup in front of me, and pretended to be angry. "Then hurry up and drink the meat that fell in, make it grow back quickly." I frowned and shook my head, but it's not easy to lose weight, so at least I won't have to go on a diet. He was so angry that he lost all patience, scooping up a spoonful of soup and feeding it to me while gently coaxing, "Come on, little L, open your mouth, listen to the doctor, brother. Only healthy people are the most beautiful." I healed my injuries under Chen Jing's half-angry, half-coaxing care, The next time I saw Julian Liang was at the supermarket 6 months later. I was holding a few oranges while looking for Chen Jing and accidentally let one roll away. It kept rolling and rolling until someone bent down to catch it and picked it up. It was Julian Liang, indeed mature and reliable, very good at taking care of people. From the silent eye contact, I sincerely said to him, "Julian Liang, thank you," after I spoke. Chen Jingji's voice suddenly came. He was looking for me. I quickly replied, coming, and just missed Julian Liang as he was about to speak. Just as we meet briefly in this vast universe, we eventually drift apart. That night, after returning home, I was organizing my study when I saw a photo frame in the glass cabinet. Inside was a hand-drawn cartoon figure, a chubby little girl with brother written in the speech bubble above her head. I took the photo to ask Chen Jingji when he recognized me. He smiled slightly, raising the ends of his eyebrows, and casually flipped the photo frame over. I was stunned. It was a photo of him, but the lens focused on me passing behind him. The date recorded on it happened to be the day we climbed the mountain, so the next day he sat down beside me. From then on, our story had a new beginning.